Right, let's get started. So hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar, Goodbye Flash and what does this mean for e-learning? I just want to get started with a few housekeeping rules. So first of all, you're all in listen only mode. You can communicate with us at any point during the webinar using the questions panel. Secondly, you will receive a recording of this webinar within the next day or so. It's probably sooner, but let's just make sure I give myself some time. And finally, at the end of the webinar, there will be a survey and we'd love to know your thoughts and feedback. So please do fill this in. I just want to get started with a poll. I'd love to know which authoring tool you're currently using for your e-learning development. So please select the option that's most relevant to you from the options on your screen. Fabulous. It's great to see that most of you use Articulate Storyline. And a lot of you also use Storyline and beyond. And those of you that don't, hopefully, maybe this webinar might convert you. So let's get started. I'm Hannah Wadhams. I'm the marketing manager here at Omniplex, and also on the call with me today is my colleague Lena, who's an Articulate Storyline trainer with us at Omniplex. So Lena, what will we be covering today?
Hi Hannah, hi everyone. It really is a great turnout, so thank you so much for being here. Today we will be covering a brief background on Flash, the impact the ending of Flash has on your e-learning courses, and what you'll be required to do before the end of Flash. Now, the topic of Flash might not be the most exciting topic for some of you, but it is actually a very important one for all of us. One that will create actions that will need to go on our to-do list. So you're already ahead by being here, and by the end of the session, you'll know exactly what you need to do. Mine and Hannah's job today is to provide you not only with information, but also an action plan to make it easier for you to be best prepared for this upcoming change. And we hope that this will save you some time from doing extensive research online or having to go to your IT department with questions. And we help you to understand what would really need to be done, and we'll make it as easy for you as possible. This webinar is around 30 minutes, and we'll be asking you to interact with some questions to answer. We had a really good turnout the last time we hosted this webinar, and we had a lot of questions, which was brilliant to see. What we've decided to do this time is to create a FAQ document to send to you all after this webinar. That way you don't miss out on any of the questions asked, nor do you have to jot down the answers whilst they're being discussed. So if you have any questions, please do email us on learning@omniplex.co, and we will add your question to the FAQ document. And then we'll send you all the questions and answers, which we hope will be a really useful takeaway for you.
Brilliant, thanks Lena. So let's start the learning section of today's webinar by understanding what Flash is and the impact it has by ending. You'll most likely be familiar with the Adobe Flash Player. It's a plugin used on most internet browsers. This plugin allows us to see certain types of digital content, such as video, audios, and games through the web browsers. Another key piece of terminology we'd be using today is HTML5. Simply put, HTML5 is the coding language that allows us to see things online. However, predecessors of HTML have historically been a bit behind other areas of the web. For example, when people wanted to play videos on their websites, they couldn't do it. So plugins like the Adobe Flash Player were built. But now HTML5 has caught up and has added capabilities such as video playback built straight into its code. So these plugins are no longer necessary. We've known about the end of end of life of Flash for a really long time, since July 2017 to be precise. But let's be honest, 2020 came around much quicker than any of us were expecting. So that means from the 31st of December this year, Adobe will stop updating and distributing Flash. Some of the biggest names in tech have been calling for this for a long while, including Facebook and Firefox. However, several gaming, education, and video sites still use Flash, including legacy versions of Articulate software. That being said, many browsers have been blocking Flash for quite a while now. You'll probably recognize the Flash is blocked pop-up banner on your web browser. So, using the poll that I'm about to open, let me know, do you think the end of life of Flash is a good or bad thing? Wow, I'm quite surprised. 37% of you think that it's bad news. Well, that's not quite right. The end of Flash is good news. It's a positive step for the industry. It removes the method that many hackers have used to distribute malware and viruses over the years. They used to exploit security vulnerabilities that they found within Flash, and often with significant disastrous effect for the end users. So it's easy to see why most IT teams welcome this move. It will be replaced with HTML5, but from a user's perspective, nothing will feel too different. It's us digital creators that need to check a few things to make sure our content will still work correctly, is compatible with HTML5 and the future of web. This is because the range of tools we use, specifically in e-learning development, may produce a Flash output, especially if they're the older versions, such as Storyline 1 or 2 or GoAnimate. They all require Flash to run. This is why you can no longer buy any of these authoring tools, as come the 1st of January 2021, we cannot guarantee how they will run. At the start of the webinar, I asked you all which authoring tool you use, and it's great to see that so many of you already use Storyline 360. Storyline 360 and 3 were built without any Flash dependencies. So this means come the 31st of December this year, they will still run completely seamlessly. Now, you'll also be pleased to know that if you don't have 360, it doesn't necessarily mean your e-learning will stop working on the 1st of January 2021. It does mean that you're going to need to check if your courses have been published to Flash or HTML5, and that also goes for yous that use 360 or 3. If you're still publishing to Flash, you're going to need to check that it's to HTML5 too. But it's not going to fall over and stop working on the 1st of January 2021. Some of you also said that you use Vyond, but what many people don't know is that Vyond is GoAnimate without Flash. Yes, the Flash end of life was one of the main triggers for the team at Vyond to rebuild their entire software and rebrand in the process. So good news for you if you're already using Vyond.
So Hannah, I mentioned earlier that we might have some actions for our to-do list. And I think it's a time to actually get that to-do list out for the first time during this webinar. So a suggested action for you all is to check if your authoring tool can publish to HTML5. If you're using 360 or Storyline 3, I can answer that for you, and the answer is yes, it can publish to HTML5. If you don't have either of those, then please do take an action to check. We'll be adding a few additional points to your to-do list, unfortunately, a little bit later. If your authoring tool isn't HTML5 compatible and there's still a fair few out there, you will need to consider upgrading. For those of you with Articulate Storyline 360, you'll know that you can fully tailor your publishing settings. Using the HTML5 or Flash publish settings means that HTML5 is a dominant format of your course, but it does have Flash as a fallback should a learner, in very, very rare cases, be using an older web browser to view the course. This is kind of great, as you've got the best of both worlds and your learners are a lot less likely to experience any issues. Another consideration we must make is regarding our learning management systems. Our LMSs run through web browsers, meaning if our web browsers stop playing Flash content, this content will not play in your LMS either. The good thing, however, is that a lot of these browsers have been working alongside Adobe to make the transition as seamless as possible. And you now have the time to make sure that your content's working correctly. So the next action for your to-do list is to check how your LMS provider handles Flash. Most LMS providers that we've spoken to are already planning for the end of Flash anyway. So do check out their action plan online, or just give them a call or drop them an email, just so you can ensure that you're planning accordingly as well. I'd also advise for you to speak to your own IT departments. Understand from them how they are planning to address the end of Flash within your own organisation. They may have already turned it off or are planning to do so before the 31st of December. This information is vital for you to know and be aware of, because it may alter your deadline date and your preparation date. And you want to be in accordance with your IT department and organisational choices. So as you can see, we hope you don't mind, but we've popped that one onto your to-do list too. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have a list of all the e-learning courses and modules that you hold within your organisation? If you can just pop your answers using the poll question there, that'd be brilliant. Okay, getting some mixed answers. Give you a few more seconds to answer there. Okay, that's really interesting, very mixed. And if you don't have one, you know what to do by now. Add it to your to-do list. I've actually started preparing for this myself at my previous company. And what I found really useful to have was a list or a catalogue of e-learning courses, and also a list of all the digital media that we held. If you don't have a list, I would highly recommend creating one for a few reasons. Firstly, it can be quite a simple Excel spreadsheet which lists each course and has columns for the different facts that you need to find out in preparation for Flash ending. That way you can collate the facts, track your progress, set yourself some deadlines, and also it makes it really ideal to delegate certain tasks to other people in your team. I'll share with you a sample copy of one that looked quite similar to the one that I had created, just to give you an idea. So here we've got just basic course information, and it includes the full course title, where the source files can be found, how the course or module is published, what software was used to create this course or module. This is important, especially if you're using a range of tools. If you know the publishing settings, jot that down too. So was it published as Flash or was it published as HTML5? And if you don't know the settings, check if the tool allows you to publish to HTML5. If the tool you use isn't compatible with HTML5, it may be worth checking if there's a newer version of the tool that will enable you to publish to HTML5. Then I would suggest adding some progress columns that are aligned to your quality standards. So here I've suggested to test it and publish to the LMS to check it again. The reason I suggest publishing to your LMS is because it may look fine when you're previewing it, but until you publish it to your LMS, which is where you'll basically be able to see if there's some errors or things that aren't just quite looking right. Therefore, if you're testing it on both, you've got all bases covered. Hopefully having something like this creates a bit of an organisational framework that you could use and help you keep track of what's been done and what's left to do. I've just mentioned quite a lot of testing there, and I've recommended quite a lot of testing. This is because it's not as simple as just republishing your course for HTML5 and sharing it. We need to fully test it first to establish a few things. So firstly, can you get through it from end to end? Items that worked in Flash, such as navigation triggers, can break when you republish, especially if you're bringing your course into a newer version of the software. Secondly, check if your animations work. There are a few animations that are not part of HTML5, which means that what was once a slick animation sequence may now just be a bit jumpy or clunky. I've noticed that one of the most common animation issues that I faced was with the wipe animation. And it was one that I used a fair bit in my content. In the past, this has not worked in HTML5, and you may get an item instantly displaying rather than appearing with the animation you intended to show. Thirdly, check if your courses work in all browsers, especially if your company doesn't use a default browser. We had one client with courses that worked perfectly in one browser but not in another. So our end result there was to actually publish it with HTML5, but also with that Flash fallback to enable the course to run in both browsers. Check if your learners are using smartphones, and if they are, check that it works on their smartphones. And finally, test that it is reporting results to your LMS. So there's quite a few testing checkpoints there. Therefore, you might want to create a separate checklist alone for just testing, which is, I think, something that'd be really beneficial, and you can just, again, just keep track and progress of what's been done. Hannah, we had a frequently asked question the last time we hosted this webinar. Could you share a little bit more about that, please?
Of course. One of the main questions we were asked in our last webinar is about how you can tell if your course has Flash content in it. There's a neat little trick because there isn't really a one-size-fits-all solution here. But our top tip is to test it in the Chrome web browser. If you don't use Chrome all the time, when you open it, there will be a pop-up that asks you if you want Flash on or off. If you do use it all the time, it's likely that you'll get that pop-up while testing your course. If your course works seamlessly while you continue to block Flash, it means it will work seamlessly after the 31st of December this year. If it starts getting clunky or refuses to play when you've got Flash blocked, it means it either has Flash content inside it or it is published to Flash. And it's a great way to double check your content will work properly after the 31st of December this year. Maybe a little time consuming, but it'll be worth it in the long run. So we've covered a lot of content in today's webinar. So let's just quickly have a recap. We now know what Flash is and why it's ending, to make sure that there's no security risks for us going forward. We know the impact that it will have on our e-learning courses and the delivery of our courses and how it may impact our LMSs. And finally, we now have a step-by-step plan to kickstart our work to make sure we're ready for the end of life of Flash come this December. I know we went through the checklist quite quickly, so let's double check you've got it all. Your first step is to check that your authoring tool publishes to HTML5. Then you need to find out your learning management system's plans for the Flash end of life and contact them if need be. Then speak to your own IT team. They may have different plans on when they are going to stop your organisation using Flash content. This could be before December this year. So you really need to make sure you're in line with your IT teams. And finally, create a list of all of the e-learning courses you already have. And as we mentioned, we really recommend some testing all the way through, from the start of the course to the end, and to make sure it's reporting back to your LMS correctly. It will make your life so much easier when it comes to upgrading all of your content if you keep that in a neat checklist, as Lena showed. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I really hope you've learned something useful in this webinar and that you now feel ready for the end of life of Flash. As Lena mentioned at the start of the webinar, we are compiling a Flash end of life FAQ document that we will share with you all by this Thursday. So if you have any questions that you'd like to include in the document, please email them to learning@omniplex.co ASAP. But in the meantime, you have two options. If you have any pressing questions that you really need some help with, feel free to give us a call on 08000 850 550. That number's on your screen as well, but if you didn't catch it, it was 08000 850 550, and one of our eLearning Solutions consultants will love to help. And if you have any quick high-level conversation questions, feel free to chat them in the questions panel now. Sam Denman, you've got a very interesting question there. Storyline 360 does publish to Flash with HTML5 fallback. You don't need to change that format of publishing, but it's recommended that you do. It's always best to have HTML5 as the dominant publish setting, especially going forward as Flash stops. You may find that some of your interactions, as Lena mentioned earlier, may be a bit jittery if you leave it as the Flash is the dominant output. But we're more than happy to discuss that with you further, and I'll include that to the FAQ document because I'm sure it's going to be a very frequently asked question. Jane asked if it's possible to republish Storyline 2 courses in Storyline 360. Yes, Jane, it is. You can upgrade them. Storyline is forward compatible, but not backward compatible. So that means that you wouldn't be able to open Storyline 360 courses in Storyline 2, but you can open Storyline 2 courses in Storyline 360. Some of your features may change ever so slightly. I found at one point my fonts all changed when I opened it in Storyline 360, but it was as simple as making sure the font was there and fixing it all. But that is a really quick win on making sure that your content's all up and ready, and you won't lose all the content you've created in Storyline 2 by any means. Sam, your supplementary question about changing the settings of your publishing. If you go into your publish and then the LMS output, there's a little dial at the bottom of the page, but I'll include a step-by-step on how to do that in the FAQ document. Kashmir, no, Articulate Storyline 3 works perfectly. It was built from the ground up without any Flash dependencies, so the software itself works, and you can publish HTML5 from Storyline 3. So you're all set. You just need to make sure that you haven't used any Flash content within your courses. Nikki, yes, if HTML5 is the dominant source, so the first name, so you'll notice on Storyline it says HTML5/Flash. HTML5 comes first, you'll be okay. Yes, Maura, that's right. If HTML5 is the dominant source, it will still work seamlessly. You just need to double check that you haven't used any Flash content within the courses. Sally has a great question about the difference between Rise and Storyline. Rise is fully web-based, as we all know, and we all love Rise for that reason. So all of your content you create on Rise is already HTML5 compatible. It will not be impacted by the demise of Flash in any which way, and will still look beautiful and seamless as ever. Jason, brilliant question there. Jason has asked me if we're aware of any good tools to create animation for e-learning purposes. We do know one. We partner with Beyond. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, they used to be called Go Animate, which says what it does on the tin. It's a fantastic tool for animation. It's really easy to use, and it works seamlessly with Storyline. You can input your animations as GIFs or videos or other such things. It's a fantastic tool, and if you'd like some more information on Beyond, please drop us an email, again, at learning@omniplex.co. I would be more than happy to give you some more information about that. I look forward to hearing from you soon, Jason. Roseanne has asked if MP4 file type is the correct to use. Yes, that's right. So when you publish from Beyond, you do a full resolution video. I think it's 1080p, they call it. And then you import that as an MP4 into Storyline and it will work seamlessly. Yes, Kashmir, there is a recording of this. I will be sending it out probably early tomorrow morning. So if nobody has any more questions, oh, okay, sorry. Roseanne, you meant uploading to Rise. Yes, that's the same. That would be MP4 as well. Feel free to get in touch if we need to dig a bit deeper into that question. You can get me on learning@omniplex.co and we'll sort that out for you. So brilliant. As the questions come to an end, I'd like to say thank you again to all of you for joining us. It's been a brilliant webinar. And if you need anything, please get in touch at learning@omniplex.co. And of course, I hope you all stay very safe and well in the current global crisis.